And this next topic is really hard to talk about because there are so many. The first 4 months and now 9 days of the year. Well, this may be 2 days old. 150 people have died in 22 mass killings. That's an average of one mass killing a week. That includes the bloodshed Saturday at the Dallas area mall, the story we were talking about at great length yesterday, where 8 people were fatally shot. I believe 9 now. And it's hard to talk about because you'll say, oh gosh, did you see the mass shooting and wherever? And I'm not being crass about it, but it's like, they're hard to keep up with. Like, where was that? Oh, it was where? It happens all the time.
That's right. And if you're not in your normal routine where you'd be paying attention to it, like this happened over the weekend, I was out of town and I'm like, oh, and that out of someone's mouth said, oh, another one. I could be, last week when there was another shooting, we were standing in beautiful ocean water and somebody had their phone and said there was a mass shooting. I mean, it happens all the time.
It is. It's really heartbreaking. Leigh Richardson is a licensed professional counselor and founder of the Brain Performance Center. And Leigh joins us now in the Big 89. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a very, we probably don't have enough time if I start with this question, but can you give us an idea? Why does America have so many mass shootings? I know we can get into gun control and all this other kind of stuff, but we're just talking about the frequency with which this happens, and it's just head spinning.
Well, it is head spinning, but thank you for asking me to talk about it because I believe we do need to talk about it. And mass shooting is defined as killing with 4 or more deaths. So everything below 4 is not even considered a mass killing. And we can't close our eyes to that. And, the question why has been asked. We started asking why 20 years ago when Columbine happened. And then 10 years later, Sandy Hook. And then 5 years after that, Vegas. Why? And we can't find an answer. We know that gun violence has increased over the last few years. We know that some gun laws have become more relaxed. And we speculate that the effects of the pandemic with all the stress from the isolation come into play. But we still don't know why. And I think that, it happens across the country. It's not just, it's in the South or it's in the Northeast. It's everywhere. And it's so unique in that some of the people actually know they're killers and some don't. So I think we'll continue to ask why without really having a definite answer.
Well, and the brain is so fascinating, Leigh, and you're a person who's literally devoted your life to studying the brain and how it impacts our behavior. I can remember doing an interview with a mental health professional in April of 2020. And I was doing this live interview because none of us could go to the office, and we were doing a live, I don't know, it was a live interview. And she said, you are not going to believe the mental health tsunami that is coming. And at that moment, and I say this all the time, I'll never forget the impact it had on me. So as you talk about, 10 years ago with Columbine, we were asking why. We could talk about the current events with the pandemic. We're asking why. Do you believe that mental health tsunami is the impact that we're seeing right now because of the pandemic?
Well, there's two sides to this question. There's a why and there's a how. We know how they do it. That's where you get into the gun control. And when we look at the why, we do look to mental health. And it's interesting because I have done some research, and a lot of these people don't have mental health diagnosis. Now, is that because nobody cared enough about them to take them to a doctor and get that diagnosis? I think it's what plays into the mental health is the lack of being connected to a community, whatever that community is. And when you go back to the pandemic, we couldn't go to school, we couldn't go to church, we couldn't go to work. But I think that people that don't have that social level of connectivity and loneliness, personally, I think loneliness is more likely to kill you than a heart attack.
Yeah, they said that was the most recent epidemic was loneliness that's going to be that we're going to be facing. Rob, did you have something? I cut you off there?
No.
Okay. So Leigh, let me ask you this. There's two sides to it, but the mental health side of it, when you say here are some folks that were undiagnosed, this is what's coming to the forefront. as we see this and we're talking about it, and it's so important to create awareness about mental health, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. What can we do to help, and what do we look for in somebody that may be suffering and we don't know about it?
Well, I mean, the red flags are somebody that's socially isolated, somebody that cannot engage with you, somebody that always hangs back or hangs on the sideline, somebody that doesn't have an interest to identify with. I mean, if you're in high school, maybe that's band, if you're a stay-at-home mom, maybe that's arts and crafts. But that interest, that sense of having something to connect with and connect to other people with. So if they don't have that, that's a red flag.
So, but Leigh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to kind of take that a step farther, because we're getting better. I feel like as a country, sadly, because this happens so often, people are like, yeah, that person was a loner. Yeah, that person was posting weird stuff on social media or whatever it is. All the telltale signs of somebody who might be dangerous. And then they go, yeah, we saw that, but we couldn't do anything. You can't go arrest somebody or take a weapon away or, raid their bedroom because they're exhibiting odd behavior. So that's a real challenge, because I think we are getting better at identifying those people, but what they might be doing prior to committing the crime may not be a crime.
You make a very good point, but what we can do is that we can show some kindness. I actually saw a study about a shooter that somebody stepped in, showed some kindness a couple of times, and the shooting never occurred. So if you can step in, show grace, show kindness, treat that person with respect, that can have an impact on them. I mean, believing, just showing somebody that you care enough to stop and check in with them can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's an interesting conversation to have. You got to step in. I would be a little bit nervous to step inside somebody's gun, where the gun is at. But, it's important to step in, even if you see it from afar or you see it on social media.
Well, and I agree with you. I'm a trained professional, and the thought of approaching somebody the Allen is not far from my house, and the thought, what if I had been at that mall? Yeah. If I had seen that person, would I have gone up to him and tried to step in? And boy, do I get a state of pure fear and freeze in my body? Yeah, I do.
Well, you brought up some interesting points here, Leigh. We are so grateful you're on the Big 89 today. Licensed professional counselor and founder of the Brain Performance Center, Leigh Richardson. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Leigh.
Thanks for having me.
Really interesting conversation.